As the Battle of the Wilderness erupted on May 5, 1864, the Zouaves, renowned for their brightly colored uniforms and fierce reputation, played a dramatic role in the brutal fighting at Saunders Field. This open clearing in the dense Virginia forest became a focal point as Union forces under General Gouverneur K. Warren clashed with entrenched Confederate troops. The Zouaves, often serving in elite regiments like the 5th New York or the 146th New York, charged bravely into the smoke-filled field, where visibility was poor and the underbrush caught fire, trapping wounded soldiers in the flames. Their distinctive uniforms made them conspicuous targets, yet their bold advance symbolized the ferocity and chaos that would define the Battle of the Wilderness, an opening to Grant's relentless Overland campaign.
Sometimes Civil War stories hit home from generations ago, and their stories link you to the past, make you think about the people that fought out here on these fields. The very next morning when Hancock's men get up and they get ready to go into the fight, and they're traveling down these roads, one soldier noted that the army had a dark and ominous feel about it. They'd realistically just come out of winter quarters not too long ago, packed up everything that they could pack up, and headed across the Rapidan to get ready to find Robert E. Lee and the Confederate Army and make battle. Naturally, those men, well, they weren't feeling like the best times were coming. But not everybody in that army felt the same way. There were other soldiers, including Gouverneur K. Warren himself, in the United States Army. Gouverneur K. Warren wrote back home and told them that he felt positive. He felt like good things were coming, that they could win this war. In their camp, things had changed. 1862 was no longer a thing. Even 1863 was no longer a thing. The battles that happened in and around Chancellorsville was in the past. So the thicket of trees out here called the wilderness is so thick and tangled that now the armies are within 5 miles of each other. Neither army knows that. They can't scout out the area in between. It's too thick. There's no open fields. You can't even see the dust rising in the air because it's May. And even if the dust was to rise, you wouldn't be able to see over top of the trees in order to indicate that a large body of men are moving in any direction. So here they are sitting across from each other that evening, 5 miles apart, neither one of them knowing that they're about to run into each other. just before bed, Lee sends out an order to Ewell. And he tells Ewell, move your men early in the morning and strike whatever you find. Ewell says out loud, just the orders I like. Strike whatever I find. So he's got his blood up and he's ready to fight. And they're pretty positive about the campaign that they're going into. They still feel like they're the army that entered the Battle of Gettysburg. But they're not. So shortly after 7 a.m. on the 5th, Warren's men end up running smack dab in the middle of the Confederate skirmishers, going down the turnpike. They can see off in the distance as the Confederates are filing to the left and to the right to go into line of battle. And they're getting behind some timber and some thickets of trees. Well, the army halts. Meade decides to halt the army too, because he doesn't yet want to put everybody into the fight. Warren is being very cautious. He wants to see what's going on out there. He sends men forward. The attack begins in earnest. Then the next thing you know, he slows it down again. He decides he really wants to see what he's facing. General Meade gets impatient with Warren and then sends a direct order to him, you will attack at once. General Warren has no other recourse but to take his men down the fields here, down the turnpike, and start fighting. And he does so, line by line, send them into the fight. And that is what gets us up to Saunders Field. Closest to the fight out here was old Baldy himself, Ewell. They called him Baldy. Ewell's men were out here ready to fight, and they were the ones that were lining off in the roads and going from the left to the right into line of battle. Now it's not the largest group of men, and they're not quite ready and concentrated to fight. Knowing that, General Lee ends up sending word to Ewell to slow his fight down, to not throw everything into the fight until they can get A.P. Hill to come up and join the fight, because he also knows that General Longstreet is still about 10 miles off. He's a good full day's march before he gets into the fight out here at the Wilderness. So they want to be able to get as many men up and concentrate as they can, because they know they're outnumbered at least 2 to 1 here in these fields. Now at this point, Charles Griffin is left behind to guard the turnpike. And that's pretty much where we're set up, where Warren is and the Army is for the United States Army, heading into the battle over at Saunders Field. Now over at Saunders Field on the east side, there's 4 brigades under Johnson. He's further extended south by Robert Rodes. And that's what the Confederate lines are looking like as the fight starts getting real heavy over there at Saunders Field. So let's talk about Heirs Brigade now that we're out here. In the fields at Saunders Fields, Heirs Brigade comes swarming in for the attack. Now Heirs Brigade is made up of a lot of Zouaves. And if you know anything about Zouaves, they're a very colorful unit from New York. A lot of their uniforms are red or gold in color, big baggy pants. I'll even throw some pictures up here for you to take a look, and you can see what their uniforms look like. Now that you've seen that, think about being in the brush around gray and blue uniforms. You're fighting in those fields, and the thickets are making it impossible for people to see each other. But you come bounding out of those woods wearing bright red and yellow. Maybe you're in the woods and the thickets wearing bright red and yellow, and a lot of it. Well, now you become an instant target for anybody that's looking to fire upon a Zouave. The battle at Saunders Field becomes that contest that proves that Zouaves, not only are they tough, but their uniforms make them very good targets. Because Heirs Brigade comes out of that fight with some pretty heavy casualties. But out of all the casualties, the majority of them happen to be the Zouaves. Out at Saunders Field, the 140th Zouaves leads the way, and they go rolling into the field. They end up veering left. As they veer left, the regulars end up falling out of the field. They get hit hard and get hit fast. And the regulars fail. Well, as they fail, they're rolling back, and two other Zouave units are coming up. The Zouaves see them and are curious, but they're not going to fall back. They get back into the fight. The 146th and the 140th are now in this fight together, tangled, and going towards the Confederates. And they end up being the backbone of the largest fight that happens there at Saunders Field. It's a pretty amazing moment for the Zouaves. Now all is going great for the Zouaves, the 140th, the 146th, until they near the tree lines there at Saunders Field. And what eventually happens is the Confederates open up a heavy fire on them immediately to their front. And it stops them like a brick wall. The Zouaves are basically halted in their path and annihilated right there at the front. So you can see the men who have been fighting so hard to get to that point at Saunders Field are now starting to be demoralized by the condition that they're in. Now Lieutenant Shelton, with his U.S. battery, is out there on the turnpike. He's brought guns up with the intentions of unlimbering them and giving artillery to support the fight that's happening at Saunders Field. But when the soldiers start falling back and the chaos starts happening around him, the Zouaves are directly out in front. He starts seeing his men getting picked off one by one, so he's in a hurry. He unlimbers his guns, he loads them as quickly as he can, and he starts to fire. But what he ends up doing is he ends up firing his guns right into the back of the Zouaves. A lot of the Zouaves commented about that, saying that that fire that came from behind and took out Zouave soldiers ends up being the thing that demoralizes them the most, because now they don't know which way to work. They don't know where they're getting attacked from. They're actually getting attacked from their own men, and they can't stand the canister fire from behind. So they end up having to fall back because of it. Now, of that deadly canister fire that came from behind, the cannons that were unlimbered, Lieutenant Griffin would later write, "The shot went pouring through our ranks, badly demoralizing the heroes who were stemming the tidal wave of bullets pouring onto them." That's from the lieutenant himself. So you can see the effect that's happening here. The confusion of this place, the thickets, the trees, the whirring of the bullets, the canister shot, the units themselves damaging each other. And it's also real clear as to why later on in this battle, James Longstreet himself ends up getting wounded by his own men. This place is a terrible place to make battle. It's now at this point that grisly hand-to-hand combat starts to take place at Saunders Field. The Zouaves and all the soldiers, the Yankee soldiers, have come up to the line there in the tree line, and they're starting to pour into the location where the Confederates have made quick breastworks to protect themselves. They are now fighting hand-to-hand. They're using bayonets to stab each other. They're clubbing their muskets to hit each other over the head. They're doing a tactic that they call braining, which is basically using your musket to mash the brains out of someone's head. And the fighting is so intense there that the amount of firepower that's concentrated in the location starts to set the underbrush on fire. And then they can start hearing people scream all around. They were laying on the fields catching fire. And this is only the first day of the battle. Just off in the distance there's a road that runs in this direction. The Union Army is actually coming up from this direction, and all their wagon trains are stretched out back that way. And the Army is traveling out there on that road and is coming up through here, Warren's portion of the Army. Out here in these fields, this place looks a little bit like a small village because this is a plantation. Today is just a big red house and a bathroom that the visitor center has put in over here for the national park. But there would have been all kinds of structures out here in this field. Probably one of the reasons why Warren decides to take this location as his headquarters when the fight starts. Now time for a little battlefield orientation. So I'm out in the middle of Saunders Field right now, and this is one of the limbered carriages here for ordnance for a cannon that would have been placed out here. You can see Saunders Field stretches out in this direction. It's kind of a rolling flat open plain, and it goes up towards the heights there in front of us. You see the cannon there where the ditch is, and they talk about Winslow's battery placed out in here, kind of off in this low-lying area. This is where he unlimbered and started firing into the back of his own men, killing not only the Confederates up on the hill, but his own men from the Zouaves. In this position back here, where the tree lines are, Union soldiers are approaching from that direction, and they're stretching out and they're moving over here. You have the Zouaves, like we talked about, the 140th, the 146th, mostly New Yorkers that are coming up through here from Heirs Brigade. And then up on the hill, we have the Confederates stretching out across the turnpike. On the left-hand side here, the units that we talked about, the 4 brigades, earlier in the video. And we'll put the map up on the screen so you can see, you can take a look at that map and look at the individual units that were there. And you notice, looking at the Confederate line for that first day's battle, it sort of looks like a thin line of men on either side. Not everybody is up and ready for the fight. You'll notice that Longstreet's not on that map showing up. And you'll notice that Hancock is also not present for the fight, or Burnside. This is what you get on that first day battle, that first initial attack, when you have Governor K. Warren out here in the fight. Now that place that we went to, Grant's headquarters, again, you go back down the turnpike here, head in that direction, about a mile off in that direction past Elwood, which is on this side of the road. Grant's headquarters is on this side of the road. So stretching out directly behind me here is Saunders Field that we were talking about in the earlier videos. And you can see it. It's a wide open, beautiful plain out here. And it's one of the rare spots in the wilderness where the fields are cleared. The only time that you see cleared fields out here without trees are stretches of land that's developed by farmers. And in this neck of the woods, so to speak, there's really not that many farmlands that are cleared and developed out here. Even Elwood itself was like some 5,000-6,000 acres of land, and he only had about 100 acres developed, which was a lot at the time for farming. So you can understand why it is when they went into the fight out here, they ended up fighting each other in such horrible conditions for Napoleonic warfare. You can't really line your men up left to right, shoulder to shoulder, and march them across the field when there's a bunch of trees and briars in the way. And not to mention, when you're directing lines of men to go into battle and meet up with other lines, like what happened over my shoulder over here, you have confusion, just like you did when they wheeled to the left when they were supposed to meet up directly with the line on their right. So out here in these fields directly behind me, Saunders Field, the 140th and 146th stood strong and took the brunt of the conflict out here when the Confederates poured it into it. And how do we know this? Well, you look at the casualty count. They brought 1,600 men into the fight out here. And out of the 1,600 men, 567 of those men end up being left out here, either dead, wounded, or captured by the enemy. That's a lot of soldiers to be leaving behind. And some have to wonder if maybe their uniforms might have played a part in that. Now on the other side of this fight, on the field here at the initial portion of the turnpike, General John Marshall Jones from the Confederacy is out here, and he's trying to rally his men during an attack. Jones ends up getting shot just above the brim of his hat, falls off his horse, and ends up mortally wounded as they carry him away from the lines. He ends up dying out here as a result of his wounds at the Battle of the Wilderness. He was once an officer of the Tactics Department at West Point, but he ends up choosing to become an officer in the Confederacy instead, which leads to his death here at the Wilderness. Now there's a picture of 3 officers from Georgia that are fighting out here as well. These 3 officers are in the same unit, and they're fighting with the 4th Georgia. And during a counterattack, the man all the way on the right-hand side ends up dying. His last name was Hawkins. Now, he's the youngest of the 3. In the entire group, you have Captain Howard Tinsley, Major William Willis there in the picture, and then you have Eugene Hawkins. Hawkins does not survive the battle. Now those Zouaves cross over this field right here behind me. And they make it all the way up here to this point. And we're about to go into the tree line now to where some of the breastworks are still placed today from that battle. It's a pretty amazing thing. They come all the way across this open field with fire from all around. And when they get to this location here, that's when the Confederates open up on them and stop them dead in their tracks. And the Zouaves leave many of their men behind in those fields behind me there. Now today out on these fields, you can just still make out the breastworks running along this little ridge here from the Confederates. They were built out here in 1864 to protect them during the Battle of the Wilderness. And you can see all those trees behind us, behind the breastworks there, and the type of thick brush that's out here. Now we're still in the very beginning of spring, so nothing's leafed out. It's not yet May over here, it's March. And out there's Saunders Field, stretching all the way across. So if you're up here on this hill, you probably feel pretty confident because you can see everything out in front of you. You can see the men stretching out coming towards you. They can't really see you. So somehow up here on these lines, Wadsworth manages to break through the Confederate lines. And he tears a pretty significant hole in here and has a very big opportunity to split the Confederacy in half, the Confederate soldiers and their units in half up here. Ewell, seeing this, immediately sends back to get Gordon to come up here and plug in the hole, somewhere out in this area where I'm at right now. Somehow in the fields behind me, Colonel Rice ends up inadvertently wheeling his unit to the left. And then what happens is he basically exposes his flank. All of this happens at the same time as Gordon comes up to plug the hole. And the opportunity is lost. Not to mention, that inadvertent wheel cost Rice a lot of his men. Those guys end up taking firepower on their flank, which runs down the line of men and not at the front. And they end up having to flee back across the field. Now in these fields that I'm at right now, Saunders Field, at this location, a third of the men that died at the Battle of the Wilderness, that happened right here, out in these woods, out in this field. Heirs Brigade comes in here and leaves behind 633 Zouaves. Now it's a large unit that Heirs has. His total casualty count for that was about 936. You can imagine. It's a lot of people to leave behind from one special group. And they all thought they were pretty special because of their uniforms. Perhaps it might have been the uniforms that caused so many of them to perish out here at Saunders Field. Just off in the trees out here again, you can see as I'm walking down this path, more earthworks on the outskirts of Saunders Field. Now there's a road that you can drive down and take a driving tour. And that driving tour, it takes you past some pretty large earthworks that are out in a clear open field. So you don't have to walk down a path if you don't want to. But I still think it's real neat to get out here and see some of these things. Now what I've got behind me here is a very unique opportunity for me to kind of show off the zigzag patterns. You can see these trenches here, this earthwork, the breastworks, kind of sitting up high here. But if you follow it back, you see a gap here underneath the tree right there. That goes off in that direction, and then it circles back around. When you take the trail out here at Saunders Field, where John B. Gordon ends up making the flank attack on the 6th of May, 1864, you get to see a lot of the original earthworks still out here today. They're very low, probably due to erosion and rain and people stepping on them and things like that. But it's really neat to see it. I'm walking away from the street right now, and I am noticing how eerily silent this place has become. It's swallowing up the sounds of my own footsteps as I walk. Kind of makes your skin crawl just a little bit. Now it's at this point in the fight that the lines are starting to dig in. They're about 300 yards apart, and they're digging in deep. Nobody wants to give up ground from where they're at, but none of them kind of seem to want to go back across that field just yet. Meade sends dispatches back to Hancock, and he tells them to come up and order Sedgwick to the Brock Road so that he can protect that crossroad out there, because they know if they lose that intersection, Lee can use that to his advantage. So that's what happens. Hancock starts to make haste, and Sedgwick goes up to the Brock Road.